Hello and welcome to Access Community Television, shamelessly promoting our friends and community. My name is Sid Tan and I'm here with ETHEL WHITTY, Director of the Carnegie Community Center, often known as the living room of the downtown East Side. Welcome to the show, Ethel.
Thank you, Sid. Nice to be here.
Yeah, the Carnegie Community Center also has a program, the Oppenheimer Park program. And Oppenheimer Park is often called the backyard of the downtown East Side. So the Carnegie Community Center represents a huge role in the downtown East Side. I just wonder if you could tell me some of the things that the Carnegie Community Center does.
Well, the Carnegie Center and Oppenheimer Park are really kind of the core places for recreation, cultural activities, arts, in the downtown East Side. And that's not to say that there aren't many other wonderful organizations, nonprofits doing those kinds of activities. But the Carnegie Center is right there at Main and Hastings. We've got a public library there. There are a lot of reasons for people to come and go. We have about 5,000 members who sign up every year. And there's lots of people who access the center who don't have a membership. So people come sometimes just to meet their friends, play some cards, lots of chess there every day. But they also come to participate in the programming. There are a lot of artists in that neighborhood, a lot of low-income artists. I mean, obviously the mandate of the community center is to serve the low-income community. That's why we're there. That's why it's funded by the city to the extent that it is because it is to make programs accessible to the low-income community that wouldn't be and are not, even at other wonderful community centers in the city, you still have to pay a certain amount to participate, and they're all on a cost recovery basis. We're not. So we get to give programs in theater, the art room programs, workshops, dance workshops, you name it, a whole gamut of things that people do access in great numbers. There's also a learning center there. And that's a partnership with Capilano College. You can come in and do anything that you need to be doing, so that it's totally student focused. It's not about getting your GED. It's about maybe you actually need to learn to read, or maybe you need to learn to use the computer or write a paper, or, so the Learning Center really coaches people and works with them from the place they're at.
And probably one of the things which I find, and full disclosure, folks out there, I am a member of the Carnegie Community Center, and one of the things I enjoy is the cafeteria. There's a tremendous food service that's in the cafeteria, yeah. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah. The cafeteria has a whole food philosophy. The food is not free. It is cost recovery. I mean, the city pays for the staff and obviously the facility, huge input there, so we don't have the overhead costs that a regular restaurant would have, but we do manage to cover the costs of food, and lunches are $2.25. There's always a vegetarian option. They're made from scratch. We serve about 500 people a day, but a real core piece of that is the volunteer program at the center. There's about 300 volunteers in any given month who work in the kitchen, who man the phones, who, we do it in 4-hour shifts, and we're open 14 hours a day. So there are many jobs for volunteers there, and things that we wouldn't get to keep open or provide without them. So our pool room, our little coffee cellar in the seniors lounge, it's all volunteer driven, and we really, I think we said something last year like 60,000 volunteer hours go into the center, and that's almost all local patrons.
Yeah. And a lot of what I find that the Carnegie Community Center does on site and at Oppenheimer is remove barriers for participation. I really like that a lot of the things are free, and a lot goes on there. For instance, the music program. There's a program there called Girls Wanna Rock. Yeah. Poetry programs. It's just amazing. I'm just wondering, we're getting ready to leave. Are there some things that we haven't brought up that we should bring up? I mean, one of the things that we could bring up is that there's been a project started there called Carnegie TV.
Yes, Carnegie TV is, we're really in the first year after a few years of trying to get it off the ground there. And thank you, Sid, for continuing to want to provide that to the community there. It's pretty exciting if we can keep that going, to actually have an opportunity there for elders in the community to have their stories be privileged, to have them working with younger folks in the community to support that, to whatever that community wants to put out to the world as being about them, that's or for them or of use to them, is the mandate of Carnegie TV, and it works perfectly with the center.
I like the idea that it's arguably the first community television program regularly scheduled, originating from a community center, and I think we're pretty ahead of curve on that kind of stuff. Thank you, Ethel Whitty. We're running out of time, and we've got to get going, so thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me. It's great.
We've been with Ethel Whitty, the director of the Carnegie Community Center. It's been a great time talking to her about the work that goes on in the living room of the downtown east side and the backyard of the downtown east side, Oppenheimer Park and the Carnegie Community Center. I'm Sid Tan. Thank you for joining us. Until we meet again, straight shooting and tight edits.
You're watching Access Community Television. My name is Elwin Shea, and today I have the great fortune to interview a musical instrument player. Her name is BEVERLY Dobrinsky. The instrument is the hurdy-gurdy, an instrument that I've seldom see. Perhaps you too also seldom see. It's an instrument that when I think of the hurdy-gurdy, I think of the days of Barkerville and the hurdy-gurdy girls, and I even think of the song Donovan, the hurdy-gurdy man. But before I have a ton of questions about the hurdy-gurdy, but before we get into all those questions of the mechanics of the hurdy-gurdy, I'd like to talk to the hurdy-gurdy player herself. Her name is BEVERLY Dobrinsky. So welcome, BEVERLY Dobrinsky, to our show, and tell me something about you and your background and the hurdy-gurdy.
Well, thanks for having me here, Elwin. Well, I have, it's been a journey to even find this instrument, right? As you know, I just can't walk over to Long and McQuaid and buy one. But I first saw it played, I mean, I'm a musician. I'm a singer first. That's my primary instrument. I've played different instruments over the years. And I first saw somebody play this instrument live at a festival in Vegreville, Alberta. His name is Brian Cherwick, and his band is called the Kubasonics. And he plays many traditional instruments from Ukraine. And I was just entranced by it. And at that point I decided I wanted to play one. So Brian was the first person I contacted when I wanted to find one, and all I could do was see a picture of it on eBay from a Ukrainian maker. And but I finally did find somebody who lived in Port Townsend, not that far away, who was a maker as well. So that's how I finally got my hands on this particular instrument. Okay, so just to be clear, you mentioned Vegreville. That's the place with the big Easter egg, no? That's correct. So that's a lot of Ukrainians are there? Very Ukrainian, yeah. And so that's why it's a Ukrainian festival, Ukrainian cultural festival. Yeah. And you come from Vegreville area? No, I come from Winnipeg. I grew up in Winnipeg, and I came to Vancouver in the mid-70s. 70s and have been here since. But yeah, no, I come out of that Ukrainian community. I'm third generation Ukrainian Canadian, so my grandparents are the ones who immigrated here.
Right, so were they part of the whole diaspora where the Ukrainians came to the prairies to work on the farms? And all
Yeah,
that?
they were the first wave.
Okay.
Yeah, the
So
pioneers. Yeah,
So were they here during the First World War?
they were here before.
Oh, before that? Okay.
My grandparents on both sides came before
Okay.
the war. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a
So
whole...
that's the first wave.
Right.
Was late 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lots of history there.
Yeah, there is.
All right, so what else can you tell me about your background and your music background? What are some of the other instruments that you played before arriving at the hurdy-gurdy?
Well, I said that my voice was my primary instrument, always has been, and since I was very young, I performed. So it was very clear from very young that I was a singer, and I got supported for that in my family and my community. So that was great. So I could just kind of go full speed ahead. But the thing that, I mean, it's interesting to me. So I'm a well-trained singer. I ended up going to university and studying music. Voice was my primary instrument. So I have all that training. But through the course of it, and I'm a folk singer also from way back too.
Okay.
And I'm a guitar player. You know, all that stuff I was doing in the 60s and 70s. And, but I was not singing any music of my own folk.
Okay. I've got a ton of questions on the actual hurdy-gurdy.
Yeah.
How does it work? I noticed that you have a right-hand crank.
Yeah.
What if is there a version that you can crank on the left side?
Sure. It's made by this man.
Let's take a look.
Stefan Puchalski. So, you know, it's made by a luthier, so it's made, he could make one for you if you're left-handed. Okay. It's not from a factory,
okay.
Right?
I'm just taking a look at that. You have 4 strings?
There's four strings.
Okay.
2.
And the way it works is that you turn...
It has 2 drone strings. The outer strings are set, and 2 melody strings.
Okay, so when you, I'm just trying to see, when you turn that, it vibrates, it rubs against the strings.
Exactly.
Okay. So I have to confess I'm not a musician, so what are some common questions that a musician would ask you about in terms of octaves, flats, and
Well,
sharps?
they would like to know how you tune it.
And how do you tune it?
Well, you can tune it in different ways. My preference is to tune these an octave apart,
okay.
The drones, and the melody string a 5th above. But I also have the option, I have 2 strings here, and I usually only play 1 melody with the 2 drones. You could double it if you like.
Okay.
But I tend to keep this one tuned a 5th above, and this one tuned a 4th above. It just allows me a different kind of fingering.
Okay. That kind of went over my head, but those musicians out there will clearly understand what you just said. So because my background is more mechanical, I'm wondering, because you're always cranking that, do you ever have to spray WD-40 into that? Are there bearings in there?
There is.
Okay.
There is bearings in there. No. I have to be careful about what I put in there.
Okay.
And I can put oil in there, like the kind of oil you use in a sewing machine, like machine oil, that very light, occasionally.
Like sewing, okay.
Yeah, but it is a high maintenance instrument. This is kind of what you're trying to get to.
Yes.
All these 2 bridges,
okay,
which elevate the strings. You see that this is one, this is a major bridge, and then there's here. Those are not attached.
Oh.
That's a big thing.
Oh, okay.
So if I loosen the strings, everything comes apart. So you have to adjust things all the time.
Okay,
it depends on the environment, etc. It is very finicky.
So when you're tuning it, do you use one of those tuning tools?
I do. I use my ear. I mean, this morning I was using my ear, but at home I made sure it was all in tune. And you see there's all these funny little things. There's cotton on there, and there's paper in there. That's all about getting the right touch of that string to the wheel.
Okay. If I was interested in learning this instrument, I guess there's a bit of a steep learning curve to it?
Well,
I guess like any other instrument, I guess.
Yeah, it's an instrument. And it is it is high maintenance, so it is a bit difficult at first to get used to that.
If viewers are interested in learning to play the hurdy-gurdy,
If what?
If they're interested in learning how to play the hurdy-gurdy.
What would
Can
they
we go
do?
to you, or is there a website, or do you
Well,
teach
you
it?
could. I'm sure there's all kinds of stuff that you could find online, but no, you should have direct access to somebody like me or another player. Yeah.
I understand that you have a CD release coming up. Maybe
do.
you can talk to us a bit about that.
I do.
And there's a CD right
my
here?
group is Zelia, and I started Zelia in '91 as a means to express my musical roots. Before, when you were talking about my background,
Right.
I said, I played folk music, but I didn't play my own folk music. And so there was a whole journey for me to reclaim that. And '91 was the centenary of Ukrainians to Canada, so it coincided with that. It was also the end of the breakdown of the Soviet Union, so also the rebirth of Ukraine. So it all kind of made sense. And so this is Zelia's third album, and it's the first album that I play hurdy-gurdy on it.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
for those of you who are Zelia fans, or for those of you who will be Zelia fans, you'll get to hear hurdy-gurdy. In Ukrainian, we call it a lira.
Lira.
And so I am a lirnik.
Lirnik.
A lirnik.
Because you're a woman,
who
or
plays,
because...
No, that just means someone who plays the lira.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me who else is in your group. I know we have you here, but behind you there are other musicians?
Yes, there's 6 of us. Allison Jenkins plays accordion, Russell Schulberg plays bass, Elliot Vaughn plays violin, and I have 2 other singers, Tatiana Zaruba and Carmen Rosine.
Okay. Tell me, when is the CD release, and where is it taking place?
The CD release will be April 2nd. It'll be 8 in the evening. We also have guest artists to open the show, Vostok, who is a cappella trio that also sing Eastern European music, traditional music. And it will be at the Ukrainian Hall on April 2nd.
And do you have a website?
Yes, it's me, www.beverlydobrinsky.com, and we are working on launching a new website for Zelia, www.zelia.com, which will be ready, I hope, by April 2nd.
Thank you so much for coming in today. That's our time, and perhaps you can play us out on our hurdy-gurdy. Is there a song that you're going to
Yeah,
play?
I think I'll exit on a very old song from the tradition of this instrument
Okay, great.
that survived.
Again, thank you.
Світи живучі GUNARGIE O'Sullivan with FAY Blaney, who is the coordinator for WOW. And WOW is Warriors Organizing Women. Tell us more about WOW, Faye.
Okay. Well, in the past year or two, we've been primarily focused on the murdered and missing women, and that's a choice of the women in the group. They're very concerned about what's been happening in terms of violence against women, and it's something that they experience routinely in their daily lives.
Especially those women who live in the downtown east side.
Yeah, that's mainly who the group members are the women from the downtown east side.
So we agree that our women are still going missing and they're still vulnerable and are at a threat of losing their lives at this point if things don't change.
I just came from a gathering in Winnipeg, and while we were there, there was a vigil for a woman that was found dead in her apartment. She'd been killed in Winnipeg, and so it's very evident that it's still open season on Indigenous women across this country.
Interesting choice of words. Now, you were at the pre-discussion for the Missing and Murdered Women's National Inquiry in Winnipeg. And were you invited there as an organization, as the coordinator for WOW?
Well, I attended as part of the Assembly of First Nations delegation, and I went as a part of the coalition. And the coalition was formed as a result of our exclusion from the Opal inquiry. And there were quite a few groups that belonged to the coalition. So we have some women's groups, some Indigenous groups, lawyer groups like Civil Liberties and LEAF, West Coast LEAF, and then there are some anti-poverty groups and church groups from the downtown east side. So it's a pretty substantial number of people that, or organizations that belong to that group, and it just is a clear indication that the Opal inquiry wasn't working.
It wasn't, and now we hope that out of this coalition that major changes will be made and that your involvement will be set in the terms of reference at this national inquiry, right?
Yeah.
So what are the positive things about the pre-inquiry discussion so far? Because you've been to the one in Vancouver, now the one in Winnipeg. What's happening?
The one that I attended in Winnipeg was the second roundtable that the AFN has hosted, and they're headed for a third roundtable. There's all different things going on that's leading up to the inquiry. So the pre-inquiry phase is completed, and they're headed into the national, and so it should be announced very soon what the national inquiry will look like. The good news that came out of this one in Winnipeg is that it will be a national inquiry as opposed to a federal inquiry, so that we have provincial involvement. And as First Nations people, we've always struggled with the cross-jurisdictional issues where, you know, you see that dynamic in child welfare where it's a provincial authority, and a federal inquiry would not have been able to address child welfare issues. And we have quite a few of our people that age out of the foster care system and do not have any family support or community support, and then they are the ones that we're seeing in the downtown east side.
Yeah, and they go into the sex trade work and boosting and all kinds of like dealing in drugs and now I understand what you're saying, that we've been set up for the big downfall when we go through systems like the foster care system, and when our children are apprehended, it disempowers us as women.
Totally.
Now, is there a high rate of child apprehension in the downtown east side, and how can we change that?
I think the rates in the downtown east side are higher than other parts of the province, and currently we have about, we occupy about 55% of all children in care as Indigenous peoples. So it's really high.
Do you think there's some kind of geographical profiling going on there when they're apprehending the children?
Well, there's racial profiling. That came from the 1951 amendment to the Indian Act that was supposed to address the jurisdictional issue, where, you know, the provincial programs and services were not being extended to First Nations people on reserve. But in 1951, after the Universal Human Rights Declaration was signed and Canada was trying to address its own violations of human rights, they decided to extend programs and services from the provinces to First Nations people, and that's when you see this really large-scale apprehension of our children. And the reason behind the large-scale apprehension is that it's a real cash cow for the province.
Yes.
Yeah, they get funding for every child that they apprehend from the Department of Indian Affairs. Those funds are transferred to provincial authorities. The same is true in healthcare, and it's also true in education.
Sad.
It's horrendous.
It is.
It's caused a lot of trouble for us.
We only have a minute to go here. I want to know what kind of programs WOW is offering the women of the Downtown East Side, and any of the other programs that the Downtown East Side Women's Center offers. What's the address? How do we get a hold of FAY Blaney?
We're at 302 Columbia, and we do have WOW meetings on Sunday evening and Wednesday evening. And the center also feeds about 350 women daily, so we offer lunch and we have free clothing. Carol Martin runs an elders group, and then we have a healing group as well on Thursdays and Fridays.
www.wow.ca?
No, well, we have a Facebook page called that, but we're under Duke.
Duke, who would have known?
DEWC, Downtown East Side Women's Center.
Thank you, Faye. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome.
Tyler, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Pretty good?
Yeah.
And I was impressed with your art. Your art is a form of graffiti.
Yeah.
And then you kind of stylized it into more of canvas work, correct?
Canvas work and fine art.
Yeah.
I kind of left the graffiti stuff where it was in the past, and
but that's how you started out, right?
Yeah.
So
yes.
You went into creating art pieces with spray cans, and spray art, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then and when you were younger, you went out and tagged. And, and you know, and that was kind of like a street life, correct?
Yes, it was part of my culture. Like I used to break dance and like graffiti stuff, and even on my spare time, I would, you know, other than school, I only got A+ in art class. All I did was paint, and on my days off, I would buy big pieces of foam core sheets and line them up, tape them from behind, and paint murals on them, then sit them against the fence so when everyone drove by they would look at it.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
So when you were like in that lifestyle of like tagging and running on the street, you know, that was like a part of your point. It was kind of an up point, but then a low point, right? It's like of homelessness and not knowing where you were going. You know, and then, so let's talk about a little bit of a story, one of your stories that you, you know, where you were running around tagging, and then you went hiding. You went to hide, and I guess the authorities showed up and you hid, right? And then at that point, that was a changing point for you, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
So you were in a train yard.
I was in a train yard in I think it was bordering Illinois and Indiana. And these trains, we found out, went into Chicago city, and we could put murals on them or put it whatever we wanted, like paint on them, make art on them, and they would go into their town, and we would represent our city where we were in South Bend, and it's not that far away from each other. And it was a freezing cold winter night, and our spray tips were sticking to our fingers, and we're like laughing and, you know, having fun and stuff. And then until we start seeing like, you know, authoritarians and police rolling up with flashlights, and we're hiding behind the train wheels and making sure that we don't get caught. And I started to have kind of like a spiritual experience where I was like, you know, my main focus was I wanna like go to art school and like, or something. I need something like formal training.
You had to be out of cold, right? Like, I think how you described it was that you wanted to, you know, not run that way where you wanted a studio. You wanted to be able to create something and be a real artist and create things on canvas and go to school, right? Yeah.
Even if I didn't end up going to school, I'm still an outsider in that scene or whatever. But I still wanted to create art and put it on canvas and showcase it somewhere. And that was my dream since I was a young kid. And I think I got sidetracked with street life and all those other things that go along with it. And
So you know, you I got a chance to look at some of your work. So we'll display some of that on the screen. You know, I find how you use your color. You use your color as like something really positive and fun, right? But then you use something that's kind of like grays and darker colors behind, and you know, shadowy figures that kind of describe, you know, that kind of a darkness of a past, and you're healing it with color and positiveness, right? But then you do it in a form of graffiti that people understand. You know, and I think that's remarkable. And you know, I think people would enjoy your artwork, and I think it would, you know, I think it would suit some of the you know, people's walls. I think it's something that's a familiarity with people's lifestyles in this modern day, right? So when's your show?
My show is March 12th. It's a Saturday, March 12th at Back Gallery Project between 2 to 4 p.m. At 602 East Hastings. The street crosses with Princess and Hastings, small little gallery.
And so how long does that show run for?
Probably till the end of the month.
Around the end of the month? So it runs for about a month?
End of March,
And for more information on, you know, on your work, they would get hold of who?
Monica at backgalleryproject.com.
Mother has told me in 1958, we have done our work. It will be your turn to stand up on stage, to direct your people, because people are coming to take your land away or destroy it. They will come.
Hello, and this is Access Television. We have Anushka Azadi in the house with me again, and plus we have filmmaker Farhan Umedaly. Welcome to the program. You're the producer and the director of a film that has been screened at the Vancouver Film Festival called A Last Stand for LeLu.
Yeah, Vancouver International Mountain Film Festival. But and with Tamo Campos, who's my partner in it, so we were a collaboration So
Okay.
got to give him some shout outs too.
Hi.
Hey, Tamil.
Yeah, I had a chance to see the film at a small screening. It was a beautiful thing. I love the cinematography, and your subjects are very powerful. You cover people like Patrika, Big Firewoman, Leona Peterson, as well as Don Wesley, the son of the chief, Yahan, and also another fellow, Matt. Yes,
Matt Danes,
Danes, beautiful. Very strong people with powerful words and actions. So Anushka, how did the two of you meet?
So me and Farhan actually met through this process of that film's creation as well as the film screening, and sort of also through Kana who's always connecting everybody. So Farhan, I think you are a little bit newer to some of this organizing.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, where I've been sort of in these communities for a little while. And what was really exciting for me in meeting Farhan was how on board and 100% on board he was for the making of this film, and also for putting it out there in a really, really powerful way. And so talking a little bit maybe now about LeLu Island and the film itself. So, we've talked a little bit always when I'm on the show about sort of the Indigenous resistance camps and communities that you travel through, that I travel through, that we, organize around. And LeLu Island is a really fantastic example of a really powerful community coming together to resist a really, really big project that is in like the final stages of its failure, I would say. And so, Farhan, do you want to tell us a little bit maybe about how you got involved with that project and what's happening on LeLu Island?
Yeah, sure. Well, how I got involved is an interesting story. I met Tamil Campos when I went up to protest, probably for the first time I can remember. And when I started to become really concerned about how Canada was changing, and I saw that Muslim people were being thrown in the corner with Indigenous people as problems, and how our Canada was sort of eroding its environmental assessment process to push through massive petro-state-like just ridiculous projects that were harmful to our people, to the world, that didn't make sense, they weren't in line with my values. So when I went up to Burnaby Mountain, I saw Tamil Campos there, and he was one of the main people sort of organizing and speaking out. And I had been producing videos, like I sort of had been producing environmentally focused videos for a while. I produced marketing videos, so that's what my job had been. I tried to do as much as I can for communities, like nonprofit work, but I was actually doing a lot of work with Suzuki Foundation as well. So I was working with his grandpa, so we had an instant connection there. And I said to him, I'd love to work with you, because he's a very enlightened, deep person who, he's really doing some amazing positive things, and being around people like him could really help me.
And he's considered an ally too, because he also is not First Nations. What nation is he?
Well, he's a mixed background. Like his ancestry comes from like Chile and Japanese Canadian through his father. I mean his grandpa, right? As well. So.
Well, those are true acts of reconciliation. The way the three of you are advocating for First Nations people and aligning yourself with us is a beautiful thing, right? It's positive, and that's how you do it. So you've made this film. You actually have some awesome footage of Christy Clark.
Oh yes, I
Tell us about that scene. That just burns me.
So from basically, I'll just maybe continue from where I was, and I would just and I'll lead right into that. So Tamil and I decided to work together, and he had been in touch with Yahan, the chief. And he sent him a message saying, this is what's happening on my territory. Can you help us? And so then me and Tamil at the same time we connected, went for sushi, and he was telling me about this, right? Over sockeye salmon sushi, and then we ended up there at LeLu Island. So we said, we'll pilot this project, and it became much bigger than when I realized how devastating and how horrible this project was. LeLu Island's paradise. When the first day I arrived, there was 15 humpback whales there. It's like the most sacred and important salmon habitat in Canada. To put a LNG plant there is insane. It just doesn't make sense, right? Anyway, so I was on LeLu Island, and then I remember being in around the sacred fire at the teepee, and I was saying, hey, wait a minute, I have footage of Christy Clark talking about LNG from an event I sponsored when I was just sponsoring events to make connections. I was actually it was for Canada India Business Council. I'd like to make connections in India to do some like for-profit projects, right? Make connections. They invited her there, and she went to town about LNG. And
this was 2 years ago.
This is 2 years ago.
Before any of the approval processes had gone through and anything, right?
Yeah. So this is December 2014. But so as soon as I I filmed at LeLu Island for a week and ran back to my studio, turned on my old computer. I wanted to see what she said. I knew I might have something in there. And she says, she starts talking about the Petronas project, the one on LeLu Island. And she goes on to say, so where are we at with that project? We've popped open the bottles of champagne on that project with Petronas.
Yes.
I mean, and she says everybody wants to do business in a province like British Columbia because they know we will not play politics with energy. I find that very offensive. I find that very offensive as a citizen of British Columbia. And just what do you mean you don't play politics? Does that mean that Indigenous people they don't have a voice? That doesn't matter what or is this all paperwork here? I don't understand.
I wish I had more time to speak with you, but I do know that you produced and directed this film free of charge, and that people in the community are welcome to screen this film in their community, in a theater, in a school, wherever they please. If they make any money off of it, they can donate the money to the LeLu Island occupation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is there a contact?
So, the best way, so if anybody wants to screen this film to help raise money for LeLu, just go to our Facebook page, A Last Stand for LeLu, and then you can send us a request and you can screen it in your home or have a party, and all your proceeds should go to LeLu Island. This film, we did it because it's the right thing to do, because we care about the environment, and this is a human rights issue in my opinion. We need to respect Indigenous people. We can't just walk over them with 10,000 years of history. I mean, we shouldn't be talking about reconciliation if we still consider them obstacles and things we need to just get out of our way to build infrastructure that doesn't make sense. That's it. That's the right thing to do.
Exactly. Do the right thing. Thank you for joining us on Access Television. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Hi, you're watching Access Community Television. I'm Jannie Leung, and I'm joined here with Chanel Lee, a Chinese seniors outreach worker with the Downtown Eastside Single Room Occupancy Collaborative. Welcome to the show, Chanel.
Thanks, Jannie.
So as we're seeing so much gentrification happening in Chinatown, today we're actually going to be talking about the intergenerational organizing and community building that's been happening in response to this. So you're one of the organizers of the recent event, Untold Stories, Voices of Chinatown Seniors, which happened on March 19th at the Sunhua building in Chinatown. Could you tell us more about the event?
Yeah, sure. So it was organized by a group of Chinatown Youth Coalition, and we decided that Chinese seniors are the most impacted by development that's happening in Chinatown, but we're not hearing straight from them. And so we decided to bring a few seniors together, a majority of whom are part of the Chinatown Concern Group. And we heard their stories and feelings and experiences about a changing Chinatown.
That sounds like a really important conversation to have at this time. Can you tell us a bit about some of the stories the seniors shared with us about how they're being impacted by the changes in Chinatown?
Yeah, so I'm sensing that there's a big sense of hopelessness among the Chinese seniors. They're seeing a lot of retail be displaced, especially the barbecue meat shops and the herbal stores. One senior was saying how every herbal store that leaves, there's a coffee shop that comes in, and it's not particularly welcoming to the local community that's there. And so the seniors are feeling like they're losing a lot and are worried about the fact that they can't depend on Chinatown through and support their livelihoods anytime soon.
So there's a lot of development happening in the community that isn't serving the needs of the Chinese and the low-income people there.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's also really exciting to see all this momentum and activity that's been building around Chinatown. For you, why is it important for Chinese youth and seniors to be organizing for this neighborhood?
I think that if we have any chance of protecting what's left in Chinatown and to bring, new energy back, the youth and seniors need to come together, and there have been a lot of exciting examples of that. And so, my project is about connecting with seniors and bringing them to find the support services they need. And there's several other organizations doing really amazing work on the ground, building a genuine connection with the place.
Yeah, there has been a lot of youth recently getting involved in the community. Could you talk a bit about the organizations that put on this event and what the Chinatown Youth Coalition is?
Yeah, sure. So the coalition came together through kind of a panic that 105 Kiefer was going to be an all-market development that wasn't going to have any units for seniors housing. And so the community organized and BD responded, but with only 25 seniors units. And so, we knew that power would come with everyone coming together. So the youth groups came together and, put out our demands for 100% seniors housing that was at welfare rate, and for community space, where we're really desperately needing more community program space for seniors in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think it's amazing to see youth and seniors working together, and I think seeing these collaborations is really exciting going forward. Could you preview some of the upcoming events that are happening in Chinatown?
Yeah, so I think next Saturday, March 26th, Youth Collaborative for Chinatown is holding their monthly Mahjong social event, and they're also celebrating a Chinese holiday called Qingming. So you don't even need to know how to speak Chinese. You can go there. There'll be people teaching you Mahjong. It's held at Chinatown Plaza next Saturday, March 26th from 3 to 6 p.m.
Great. And I'll also put in a plug for a study and discussion that the Chinatown Action Group is doing. It'll be learning about the legacy of the revolutionary Asian Pacific American movement and what we can learn today. So it'll be on May 3rd, and to find out more, you can go to the Chinatown Action Group Facebook page. So thank you, Chanel, for joining us. You're watching Access Community Television, and I'm Jannie Leung. Thanks for watching.
Hi, I'm Gary Oliver, and I'm with GUNARGIE O'Sullivan on Hot Topics today on Access Television.
Well, nice to see you, Gary.
How are you?
I'm good. Today I wanted to talk about a couple of things. One of them is a friend of mine. Her name is Patricia Kelly. She's from the Stalo Nation, and she just recently won a court case to fish salmon. And Patricia Kelly is also known as Quixel Stadel. And since 2004, she's made over 200 court appearances and finally won the battle to fish in her own territory. Apparently, remember the year that there was like an abundance of fish? She ended up going to can her salmon, like her food fish, and because there was a backup, she ended up going the next day to can her fish. Yeah. And when she got there, the fisheries department was waiting for her. They charged her. She ended up going to court with her regalia, her drums, and with her son, and was assaulted by the police and put in a holding cell because they thought that her stick and her drum could be deemed as a weapon. So the court case just went on, and I'd be interested in following up with her in the near future here on Access Television. And because, the pre-discussions for the national inquiry are like so predominant right now, I wanted to let the audience know that there is a book out. It's called That Lonely Section of Hell by Lori Schrenner. She was the lead investigator and the first investigator to look into the Picton investigation with Willie Picton, and in the book she talks about how there was a lot of sexism going on within their detachment, and nobody was taking her seriously, and she was afraid that, you know, nobody would know the story, that Picton would get off on the charges, and that the investigation would never really follow through. So she wanted to make sure that people knew what was happening, so she wrote this book.
Yeah, we actually did an interview at one time with her, didn't we?
Yeah,
we filmed it, and yeah, she was a really interesting.
Very interesting lady.
Interesting.
One of the things that she wished that she had said on the tape is that, you know, she wasn't afraid, and is to this day not afraid of the Hells Angels, who have been implicated, unfortunately, within this case. But she's more afraid of the RCMP than she is of the Hells Angels, and that says a lot.
Yes, eh?
Yes.
So was your friend Kelly with the fish? She was Aboriginal and
she's from the Stalo Nation.
Yeah, and she has all the rights to fishing, and you know they pull her in and arrest her, assault her. You know, and I don't think that's right. I think that's a real injustice
totally
in this day
right.
and age. I don't think, you know, these things should actually happen in our day and age.
Definitely not. And so you have some news on the caveman and filmmaker?
Yeah, we had I ran to the caveman yesterday, and I talked with Sean Stone and our friend Jules Rios. Yes, Jules Rios, and he was working on a film called Numbnuts.
Numbnuts, totally way up your alley.
Yeah, it's a comedy feature film. Has to do with multiculturalism and how we look at you know, making fun of certain things in those elements.
Yeah, breaking down those stereotypes
and breaking down the barriers.
Playing with inappropriate cultural barriers.
Yeah.
Should be fun. Well, that's been Hot Topics with Gary Over and me, GUNARGIE. Thank you for watching.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh
Hi, I'm Gary Oliver, and I'm on Access Television. I'm sitting here with Jeremy Hunka from the Union Gospel Mission, and it's nice to meet you for coming in and spending some time with us today. I think you guys work with the people in the lower downtown east side, correct?
That's right. We have Union Gospel Mission actually right now is right across Metro Vancouver. So we have 7 locations, but we do a lot of work in the downtown east side. A lot of work with people who are struggling with homelessness, poverty, and addiction, and we try and help give people the tools to overcome poverty, homelessness, and addiction, one life at a time.
Yeah, I heard recently in the news that there was 2 fellas that were basically shipped out from Saskatchewan out this way, and they didn't have any place to go, and I think you guys stepped in, didn't you? The Union Gospel Mission stepped in?
Yeah, we first heard about this when somebody tweeted us, actually, and then it was all over the news that 2 men from Saskatchewan who were struggling with homelessness were on their way to BC, to Vancouver. They'd been given a bus, a ticket by the government, and that was the story. And when we heard that they were coming here to BC with no place to go, with no plan, we were pretty concerned. We were pretty surprised, because you can't just arrive in Vancouver with no plan, no money, no contacts, and no idea where shelters are, and expect to get out of the rain, to get inside. It would have been really unsafe. So what we did is we showed up to the bus terminal. We contacted these 2 guys via their former shelter in Saskatchewan, and made sure that if they wanted it, which they did, that somebody was there to give them help, because if we weren't there, they would have been walking through the downtown east side in the rain with no place to go, and that would have been a really dangerous situation.
So how many beds does the Union Gospel Mission, the one down in Hastings, how many beds does that?
So we have 5 rooms that are dedicated to have having a shelter. So those are 72 beds spread throughout those 5 rooms. And what we typically do during emergency extreme weather conditions is we open up 20 mats in our drop-in center as well to get people out of the cold, out of the rain, out of the snow, make sure they have a safe place to go. But the demand has been so steady recently that we've been opening that emergency overflow nightly.
Yeah. So you guys feed people. And we have a food lineup, and it's like some of the, actually probably one of the better food lineups in all of the Lower Mainland. You know, it's remarkable. I myself, at one time in my life, I went through UGM. I myself am a recovering alcoholic, and I will always be a recovering alcoholic, that I don't drink anymore. You know, and UGM, during that time there, we helped feed a lot of, you know, the people that were homeless or people that needed that food, you know. And that was something that we did on a daily basis. And, you know, it's always giving back to our community, right? So, and I did that for, I think it was a couple of years, every day for a couple of years. And they have a men's, let's talk a little bit about the men's, they have a men's recovery center there too, correct?
That's true. So we've developed what we call a continuum of care, so that somebody without a place to go will be able to get shelter at Union Gospel Mission, they'll be able to get meals at Union Gospel Mission, and much more than that. We have a career development counselor, for example. We also have a recovery program, and that's a huge benefit to people because, as we know, in homelessness, about 60% of people who are homeless in Vancouver say that they're struggling with addiction.
Yeah.
So that's a huge number. So we have a 6-month men's recovery program where people can come, stay with us, have their immediate emergency needs met, like shelter and food, but on top of that, get into a 6-month comprehensive, holistic recovery program so that they can overcome addiction. And once you can overcome addiction and get out of that really desperate situation when you're on the street and you're looking for your next fix, that's when you can focus on transforming your reality and stepping off the street, out of homelessness, into permanent housing and into full-time employment.
Then they also carry a women's program too, right?
Yeah, women and women with children in particular actually are some of the most vulnerable in the downtown east side in Vancouver. And we have a number of programs that are specifically tailored towards women and women with children. We have a women's recovery program in Mission called Lydia Home. In addition, we have a sanctuary stabilization bed program so that women can come to us with their children and get stabilized as they move on to their next steps.
So if people want to find more information about the Union Gospel Mission, how would they get a hold of you?
You bet. You can find us online at ugm.ca. You can volunteer with us, you can donate, and you can really be a part of changing lives in Vancouver and in Metro Vancouver, taking people from a situation where they perhaps feel like they've been forgotten or passed over by society and getting to a place where they're in recovery, where they're not homeless, where families are kept together, and people in Vancouver, Metro Vancouver, are thriving.
That's awesome. Thanks for watching, and I'm Gary Oliver from Access Television, sitting with Jeremy Hunka.